Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nigeria, the Survival Series episode 306, which is titled Flooded, Forgotten, and Fed Up. So here's the latest headlines. Mokwa, Niger State has been swallowed by a flood. No, if you're thinking about this, it's not a metaphor. We are talking real water, real destruction, and yes, real lives were lost. Over 200 people died, more than 1,000 missing, thousands displaced. But hey, it's just another day in Nigeria, isn't it? Now wait, before you get angry at nature, let's get one thing clear and very straight. NiMet warned us, like they always do every year. They said it loud and clear. Torrential rainfall is coming. Flash floods are on the way. Be prepared for the coming. Be prepared accordingly. But as always, guess what happened? Our leaders, what did our leaders do? They did nothing. Maybe they thought torrential rain was a metaphor for Twitter crisis or X crisis or Twitter criticism. You know how they feel about criticism and being used as memes. But when the disaster finally struck, what did we get? As always, cue the official response. Photo ops, airlifted rice, and the classic, Mr. President has approved 2 billion naira. Oh, as usual, we have to thank God, because if there's one thing Nigerians need during a deadly flood that thousands have been lost, it's money that takes 6 months to show up and rice that expires before it arrives. But don't worry, folks. They sent 20 trucks of food, so we shouldn't complain now. When there's a problem, send them rice, you know, because 20 trucks of Gary should be enough for over 3,000 people who just lost everything. Let's also talk about NiMet, Shabi, or NIMA, the National Emergency Maybe Will Arrive Later Agency. They came in all right. They came in as they should, but it was after the flood. And already they have packed its bags and they've moved on. The floods have now moved on to the next town as they arrived. They brought blankets, some dignity, and a big old list of what they should have done if they had actually done anything before the floods. And what about the state government? As usual, Niger State in this case. The Niger State officials are on record saying that they were shocked. Yes, they were shocked. Like someone who forgot they live in Nigeria where flooding is as regular as power outages and fuel price hikes. So here's the real question. How do we keep getting blindsided by the same problem every year? Every single year. This is like failing a test when you already have the questions and the teacher even whispered the answers to you. We're not just dealing with a natural disaster. We are drowning in a man-made crisis of negligence, poor planning, and also an allergic reaction to accountability. Every year we cry, every year government officials sympathize with perfectly pressed agbadas and no single mud on their shoes. They come and inspect the area and speak to the media. And every year nothing changes except the death toll. But the truth of the matter is we see you and we always remember. And we'll keep asking the hard questions, because until there's political will, real disaster response systems, and actual consequences for inaction, very important, the only thing Nigerians can count on during floods is water, sorrow, and press statements. And so to everyone in Mokwa who has been affected by this devastating flood, we see you, we hear you, and we stand with you. And to those in power, your job is to serve. Please serve. If your job is to lead, then lead. But if all you want to do is talk, then please, log off. Nigeria's had enough. Today on the show, we seek to answer the questions and bring you the biggest headlines from Nigeria and in Africa. And this time we're doing it with a feminine touch. For my very first time ever on air, I'm being joined by the lovely, the beautiful Felicity. the host, or rather the co-host of our flagship Tonight Show. Felicity, I am excited.
Gracias. Thank you for the introduction. I look forward to this, actually. It should be fun.
I cannot wait. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with the ladies on Breakfast Extra.
Welcome to Breakfast Extra, your essential Saturday rundown of the biggest stories across Nigeria and the continent. We begin today with sad scenes from Mokwa in Niger State, where flood survivors are still stranded days after disaster struck. Though the federal government has released some funds, we are unclear if that has been translated into real value for affected victims. We'll be speaking with our correspondent who has been on the ground for the current situation. Then, of course, we will shift our attention to the new NCC directive. Let's get everybody talking. We will again seek some clarity from tech analysts on the reasoning behind the decisions for banks to now deduct USSD charges directly from your airtime. Our big story today is the National Assembly's latest move to curb corruption, a proposed law that could earn offenders up to 7-year jail term for workplace bribery. But is it bold or just bluster? A legal expert weighs in as Nigerians react to this latest move. On Extra Special, we confront a scandal that sparked outrage. A teenager, an apprentice, reportedly impregnates 10 girls in 5 months. We ask, is this a moral breakdown or a failure of the system? Faith and family experts will be on in this conversation. In Focus Africa, we shift gears to Ivory Coast, where 4 opposition candidates, including heavyweights like Tijani Tiam, have been barred from contesting the October elections. What does this mean for democracy in West Africa? It is a packed show, as usual, but you have 2 different faces. I mean, one new face, that's
no, you're not.
Me, and then my co-anchor, Judith.
Yeah, there we go. It's not a brand new face, Joe. They already know your face here.
Yeah, I've been here on and off for a bit. So we will be together, and of course the team of producers and production team behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Will be taking on all the conversations.
Absolutely. It's going to be 3 hours of the very best just for you. But let's get started very first, just to get things right on moving. And we're going to get started with the big report. It's where we spotlight the issues shaping lives across Nigeria and sometimes Africa. Now, this morning, our focus shifts to Mokwa, a community in Niger State, Nigeria, still reeling from the aftermath of a devastating flood that swept through the area just days ago. Now, entire homes were washed away, families displaced, and to make matters worse, no relief camp, no medical help, no access to clean water. Residents say they have been abandoned, and with no coordinated response in sight, they are left to pick up the pieces alone. Our correspondent Joshua Imarayi has been on the ground in Mokwa and brought us this update. Take a look. We will bring that report in our subsequent bulletins, but in the meantime, we're now being joined by Kayode Oni. He is the head of news unit at Search FM. Kayode, it's good to have you join us, and a very good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. I mean, what's happened in Mokwa is a very sobering reminder of how climate-related disasters, when met with weak emergency response, can be brought to, thousands displaced and, persons without homes and families separated and just devastated, leading towards Eid. But tell me, you are a resident there, you've been in the news. What are we looking at?
We are looking at a situation where so many lives have been negatively impacted by the disaster. And like you said in your opener, for now, the victims of the disaster are not receiving adequate attention in terms of relief distribution, but it's actually devastating for not just residents of that community, but the state in general, because it's like family. So many of the victims have relatives staying outside of the area, and they've been in mourning ever since the disaster happened. And out of respect for the dead and survivors from the disaster, Traditionally, Salah celebration in Niger State is always accompanied by Durbar activities, and the state government has said, out of respect for the dead, they canceled Durbar activities this year and asked residents to observe a low-key Salah celebration. They are still trying to pick up the pieces, like you said, but for now, the picture is looking very grim.
Okay, this question seems really tired, but it's essential we'll ask it. The federal government, as usual, responded, and they said they've released 2 billion naira, along with trucks of rice for the people. Do you have any update as to whether the victims are getting access to any of this, or is there, you know, like a schedule of how it will be disbursed to reach the right people?
For now, there's not been any official announcement with regards to how the aid promised by the federal government is going to be distributed. The state has been transparent, though, in terms of who has donated what. There's an open account announced by the state for Niger State, the Niger State Distress account for donors, civil society organizations, well-meaning Nigerians to donate funds to help the victims. And thus far, I think each donor, once you donate into the account, your name and the amount you donated will be published. So for last time I checked, as of last night, well over 200 million naira has been donated by so many persons, important dignitaries, some still in government, some past government officials, some serving senators, immediate past governor.
Yeah, but beyond,
with regards to how this money.
Kayode, I get it that, I mean, you're confirming that people are donating, but what is most essential now is the people, the victims who have been displaced and their lives completely shattered. I'm asking if this relief is getting to them. And while we're waiting for that, I'll just add to it, talk to us about what previous experience has shown about how these funds are disbursed and this food that is brought is shared.
The relief materials are being delivered, but in trickles, not in a sizable number that the victims would appreciate or desire to have. They are only coming down in trickles, and the state government is saying the delay with regards to delivering these relief materials and essential items to the victims as a result of the logistics nightmare or quagmire they are presently experiencing. If you recall, so many roads have been washed away. 3 bridges were destroyed during the disaster, and you need roads and bridges to convey relief items to the badly affected areas in the community. But there's been a development, though. Initially, in the early days of the disaster, there was no form of temporary shelter whatsoever. Some of the victims were forced to sleep in the open. They were exposed to the elements, and it was very bad. They were forced to later seek temporary shelter with relatives in and around the communities. And now there's a form of temporary shelter in place. 2 camps for internally displaced persons, one run by the state and the other by UNICEF. So just because in the early days of disaster, the victims were not being sheltered and were forced to stay with relatives, now that we have some form of shelter in place, there's this reluctance on the part of the victims to actually stay in the camps for an extended period of time. So what is obtainable presently is that they just go to the IDP camps, have their meal, because they are being there's meal for, they have their breakfast, their lunch and dinner. So they have their meal at the IDP camps, and they go back to where their relatives they are putting up with. So for now, relief materials have been coming down in trickles and not a sizable number that will actually grant relief or succor to the victims. With regards to how past experiences with regards to relief materials being distributed to victims, it's not been a pleasant one. And there's hangover effect with regards to that. Now there's an element of distrust in the air. People are saying, okay, all this money is being donated, all these pledges, are the pledges going to actually lead to, because it's one thing for you to pledge a sum, it's another thing for you to deliver on your pledge or promise. So persons are skeptical with regards to if these monies will actually be made available, and if they eventually are made available, will they get to the worst hit victims of this disaster? So there's this element of distrust, and everybody is saying it's high time. You don't just post about who donated what, but let us see the impact. Let us see the relief materials being delivered to the victims of the disaster. So for now, we are yet to see that, but we are trusting that the government will be very transparent this time around with regard, as against what has been the previous experiences with regards to helping the victims. So people are skeptical, and in fact, we have some persons who are already saying they have tips, or they've heard from somewhere, unverified though, that some persons are planning to divert some of the funds and all of that. So nothing is official yet, but for now, believe there's a development for now, but not enough to actually grant succor to the victims of disaster.
Kaide, I mean, one thing is certain. One thing when it comes to Nigeria and transparency with public funds, it's always a different story entirely. But I would like to also talk more on the welfare of the victims of this flood, especially those who have lost families and loved ones, and those who are still in search of their families and loved ones. Speak to us about what that number is looking like, and what the search. Can you hear me?
I can hear now.
Kaide, can you hear us?
Hello?
Kaide, can you hear me now? Kaide, I was asking about the welfare of Nigerians. I was asking about the welfare of the victims, right, of the flood. Now we know that over 200 persons have now been confirmed dead and pulled out of the rubble, but there's still 1,000 more missing. What's the rescue mission looking like, or rather, the search mission at this time looking at, especially for those who are still yet to, get news about their loved ones that are lost to this flash floods?
Rescue, should I call it recovery? Because at this point, hopes of retrieving anyone alive is almost non-existent. So it's more of recovery operation presently. It's being spearheaded by the National Emergency Management Agency in collaboration with the Niger State Emergency Management Agency in NISEMA, as well as the locals. They've been digging through the rubbles and trying to clear debris in the hope of finding more bodies. So far, due to logistical problem as well, it's not been very effective. Most of the locals are relying on digging, sometimes with their bare hands, to see if they can salvage some property or find a relative. And there's a psychological effect to this thing. Most of the victims that survived, though, are traumatized, and it's been very, very difficult. Welfare-wise, it's been poor. It's been poor because they've actually not received the help that they need with regards to recovering from the trauma they've suffered. And some, Africans are very much into sending forth their loved ones with funeral rites and all of that. So there are some families that are not yet comfortable.
They have not been able to find closure as regards the loss of
being made worse by the fact that they cannot even retrieve the bodies of their loved ones to bury, and that's been a serious issue. And
right. Not knowing is what makes it hard. Yes, Kaide, just a second, because we're trying to bring in our correspondent who has been covering this situation, this disaster, Joshua Imarayi. He joins us live now from Niger State. Joshua, a very good morning to you, and well done on all the hard work and bringing us up to date. Let's find out with you, what's the latest this morning?
Well, good morning to you, Judith. So basically, the latest is the reeling out of aid to those people who have suffered this devastating effect of the flood You recall that a few days back, the vice president visited them and made certain promises. So after making those promises now, those who were affected in expectation of those promises being fulfilled, talking about a roof over their head, food as well, because the vice president said that the federal government is reassigning the Minister of State for Food Security to stay for the next 1 week to ensure the delivery and distribution of those food items that has been designated and duly assigned to them. So we are expecting the federal government to fulfill their pledge within this week. But however, the federal government says they are condoning that particular area where that devastation occurred, so to forestall any kind of disease outbreaks and the like. So that's where we are in this particular case.
Joshua, you talked about what the federal government has promised, but what are the criteria? I mean, in order for these people to to quickly, that's a better word, get access to the promises that's been made, there has to be some coordination. Any idea whether the criteria has been spelled out for those whose homes will be rebuilt and for those who are supposed to get part of the 20 trucks of rice and stuff?
Well, based on what I saw, it is a communal understanding of those who are affected. So it's more or less your neighbor knowing who has been affected. There's a list actually listed out of those who are affected, the people lost, and as well as those in a particular need or the other. So I think they already have this plan. The chief of the area knows everybody. The neighbor knows his fellow neighbor, as well as those who are staying in that area. They know who were affected. So basically, it is more or less meeting them at the point of their need based on who is who. It's a communal understanding, so they know who will be getting this and who will not be getting this. Because earlier they lamented that while the distribution of aid commenced maybe before, just few days after the incident, some people who were not affected by the flooding were actually enjoying this same benefit. So they swooped in to ensure that those who were not affected should not be getting this aid, but only those who are affected. So they already have a list of those affected, and the coming days, during the implementation of those aids comes into play, those who are affected will be duly considered. So I believe that those who are around that area knows who we are affected and who we are not.
Joshua, in your earlier report from Mokwa, you spoke to some people who expressed, and I mean a community leader who said that people don't stay at the IDP camp, and Kayode confirmed it this morning. They just go to the IDP camp to eat and they leave. Is there some concern about the conditions of the IDP camp? That's why some people are leaving, or they're more comfortable where they are? Help us understand the reasoning behind the lack of use of the IDPs.
First things first, the government came in too late in response to this particular disaster that rocked Mokwa government area of Niger State, basically because that IDP camp was not set up by the government. It was set up by the collaborative effort of some well-meaning Nigerians who were not affected by the flooding. The government never knew where the IDP camp is, and it is only after a while that the government were tilting to that direction of them saying they established an IDP camp. So basically, the presence of government was not in that IDP camp. The only yardstick that will guarantee people staying in where they feel should be a camp is when they know that government presence is there. When I mean government presence in the likes of medical aids, in the likes of temporary mattresses, temporary mosquito nets, as well as other amenities to caution the effects of this flooding. So basically, that is one of the reasons why they did not actually go there. And secondly, that place lacked the basic amenities of life. When I talk about basic amenities of life, I mean pipe bomb water. You would understand that days after that incident occurred in Mokwa, they still did not have light. A section of that town did not have light. It is only a few days after, just maybe a day or two before the vice president came, that was where the other side of Mokwa had light. So basically, there's no water in that camp. no running water in that camp, no government presence. And the only thing you could see are just desks, empty classrooms, or maybe sometimes locked classrooms. So basically, the presence of government not being in that camp is one of the major reasons why those people are refusing to go there. And secondly, there's this question of, if I go there, who will feed me? Who will feed me? So that is another issue, because you can't go to where you know your family members are not, and at the end of the day, you stay there hungry, having suffered a devastating effect days before, and you go back again to come and suffer hunger. So it is like a two-way losses that they don't want to incur in themselves. So that is why they are passionate up with their friends or well-wishers, or those who willingly absorb them into their household for the time being.
It's quite sad, really. It's just what you said earlier in your monologue about.
I think it's dehumanizing to have people return to the site of, their trauma or grief, and then ask them to stay there, when you have refused to provide, psychological help in terms of therapy, or grief experts or counselors. You have refused to provide, the very basic amenities. And your late arrival already is very dehumanizing to think of. And then now they still have to, scrape around. So it's very disheartening, right? And then I want to ask you just to paint a picture of us, for us. I mean, because we're sitting here in the studios, we're seeing the visuals, but it's a lot different, to have a first-hand experience. And so I'm going to start with you, Kayode, to sort of just paint the picture of the mindset and the realities of the victims of Mokwa local government area. Every morning that they wake up, what are they facing?
Every morning when they wake up, they face hopelessness. In a nutshell, they do not know what the future holds in store for them. They've lost loved ones, which could be very psychologically damaging. So it's a sense of hopelessness in the air. And, we are talking about livelihoods being destroyed. They don't know. Some kids have lost both parents. Some parents have lost all of their children. They don't know. Some who had jobs, who had breadwinners washed away in the floor, don't know who's going to pay their school fees when they resume, who's going to feed them, where they're going to get the next meal. So it's despair in the air and just sense of hopelessness. For now, I think that's just the atmosphere in Mokwa. Hopelessness and distrust, not trusting the authorities regards to doing the right thing. So many promises have been made. The Deputy Governor, Comrade Yakubu, said there's going to be an intensive infrastructural development of damaged areas with effect from next month, or this month rather, because he made the promise last month. And so people want to believe the government will act as swiftly as it has promised, but the general sense here in Mokwa is that of distrust. Okay, we've had this before, they're not going to do it, so...
To ask Joshua to respond to, to also speak on that would be like repeating what we already know is the reality on the ground. I was trying to say earlier that Judith talked about the fact that if government do not want to do what they are expected to, they should just log off. I needed to repeat that because it makes no sense to say, I have provided IDP camp, and like Joshua said, there is basically nothing there that makes it habitable for people to want to stay there.
There's also the matter of drinking water, Felicity. We could go on and on. There's also the matter of, drinking water, of clean sanitary amenities as well. Food that is not expired, also, portioning and rationing. There's just so much. But gentlemen, it's where we have to draw the curtains on this discussion. I must say thank you. We'll continue to ring the alarm on Mokwa, and our eyes are on Mokwa local government area as we continue to shine a spotlight on the people. And we hope that the search mission continues for the thousands, or rather the 1,000 that is buried on that rubble, so that families can have closure and be able to bury their loved ones. Joshua Imarayi, our correspondent live from Mokwa, Niger State, who's bringing us updates, and also Kayode Oni is the head of news unit at Search FM. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
All right, to stay with us, more conversations, more insights coming up after the break.
And welcome back. It's time for us to switch gears as we head to South Africa, where we have Bongani Ziziba on standby to give us updates as the Eid celebrations has continued. By the way, Eid Mubarak to all of our Muslim friends and loved ones, and of course our viewers at home who have been celebrating and eating all the salad meats here in Nigeria. But let's switch gears to South Africa, Johannesburg, as we have Bongani Ziziba on standby to give us visuals there from the Eid parade grounds as Muslim faithfuls in South Africa are celebrating Eid. Bongani.
What's the mode like this morning? Tell us what the scenes are before you.
Morning and a very good morning to our viewers. Unfortunately, I'm not Muslim. I won't be able to greet them in their own way. But I'm here in Bosmont, Masich, coming from Lenasia, that is the west of Johannesburg, where prayers were happening in the morning. And I saw thousands and thousands of people gathered there, Muslim community praying. And I understand that this is a very significant celebration for the Muslims, a second one, maybe in the year, the biggest one. But now I'm here in Bosmont. If I can move away from the camera just to show you the people that are here, and they are now waiting for that feast that starts with the slaughtering of a goat or a ram. Then they distribute amongst themselves, then to the community. And I also understand that this is a day of peace, a day of unity for Muslims, whereby they come together and speak of peace, not only for Muslims, but also they cater for those that are not Muslims. But let me just bring in Faisal just to speak more about this day. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us here at News Central TV. How important is this day for Muslim community?
Okay, first, good morning to the viewers and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bosmont Masjid is in the area of Bosmont, not in Lenasia like your introduction said. And generally, Muslim people are peaceful people. Alhamdulillah, this is a very significant day in terms of it's part of the Hajj where people do the sacrificing of animals, goat, you can be camel, it can be a cow, but there's also significance in the portion that each of these animals are sacrificed in. And Alhamdulillah, here with us at for Eid al-Adha, which is the second Eid, which is done during the Hajj period, people that in Mecca, they asked for forgiveness on the day of Arafah, which was on Thursday, and Friday was Eid in Saudi Arabia, where Mecca is situated. So, of course, the sighting of the moon, it's the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and that is the day of Eid. So, the people come together, this you sacrifice, and up to a third of your animal that you sacrifice you can keep for yourself and your household. The others you got to give to charity. And Alhamdulillah, yes, because for charity, first to Muslim people, and we do have non-Muslim people that are also suffering out there, and that's our form of dawah. The people that you see here, our masjid, have created this service to the community. And Alhamdulillah, we'll have about 105 sheep being slaughtered here today. The people that's here are people that got time slots so that there's not an influx of people, because you could get a number and then we only going to slaughter your sheep at 12 o'clock or that type of thing. So there's just a sequence of events. When you have some time little later, when we bring when we bring the animal closer, where the people slaughter it in a certain way, the way they slaughter it, there's no harm done to the animal. Just from another aspect, you have the SPCA that checks on in us that there's no cruelty to animals. So alhamdulillah, all that happens here today with the sacrificing of one's animal in terms of, but you must be by the means of it too. No use, you can't buy an animal on credit. You need to pay for it. You need to have the funds available. If you don't have the funds, you're not obligated to do that sacrifice. So alhamdulillah, you can see the people that are here with the family. They come along with the family, and also the process while we recite the takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, while the animal is being slaughtered, is one way of making this whole process halal in terms of our religion.
Lastly, why is it important for Muslims to share it with people who are not Muslims, who are maybe Christians? Why is it important that you share it with other people?
Okay, the first thing is you got to share it with Muslim people. We have something within our religion. If we go through the 5 pillars of Islam, the one is performing your Hajj once in a lifetime. And if you listen nicely, they're starting to slaughter, they're reciting the takbir, and then to give charity. Charity first to Muslim people. In terms of non-Muslim that are not by the means of it, it's our form of dawah. So we partake in it particularly for people that cannot afford it. Today, every majority of our nation are below the poverty line. And we need to take this opportunity and take it to everybody to show the generosity of the Muslim community.
Thank you so much for having you. We've just heard from the chairman of the Bosmont Mosque here in Bosmont. Like I said, that in the morning I was in Lenasia, where I witnessed also the same thing that is happening here. But if I could ask my camera guy just to show you around, as you can see, I think it's almost starting where the slaughtering is going to happen. Muslim community, not only here in South Africa, but around the world, showing peace and unity, and celebrating that day that comes. I understand that it's the second celebration in the year that Muslims celebrate, and it's showing love not only to Muslim people, but also to the Christian communities, to other communities. And if I can look on my side, I can see some people who are starting to come in who are not Muslims. I'm sure they are part of those that will be given whatever will be slaughtered here. It's now back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much for that very extensive coverage of what's happening where you are at. It's instructive and very important what your guest talked about, that if you don't have the funds to slaughter an animal to celebrate, you don't have to. I think it's very instructive for those who might feel some pressure. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Tongani Ziziba, their correspondent live in Johannesburg, South Africa. We'll switch gears now back here to Nigeria, as well as the south of Nigeria, the capital of Delta, and that's Asaba. Our correspondent, Austin Azu, is live there to give us the sights and sound, and also an update on how the Muslim faithfuls in Delta State are celebrating Eid. Austin, a very good morning to you.
Okay, tell us what is happening right now. Is it celebratory, or there is more concern?
I doubt Austin is not ready for us.
Okay, we'll try and... Okay, let's see if we can fix that, and we'll come back to Austin. But I did like the submission that he made. And of course, he's taking time to greet our viewers the right way. Yes. Since Bongani said he didn't know how to do it.
Is it Eid al-Karim? No, al-Kabir. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, we have to pay better attention and learn it, because last night on the news we talked about, you know, how we can respect each other's celebration, and one way to do that is to learn a bit about, you know, what makes that other religion tick, so you don't fall foul of their rules, and then it becomes an issue, you know. So it goes both ways. Christians, Muslims, non-Christians, traditional religion, that is one part that we don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, and that's completely right. I think that tolerance means understanding. You know, if you are tolerant, you are open to understand and learn. Do you get what I mean? And then by understanding and learn, you get to appreciate people's ways, and then accept it for what it is.
Tolerance is key, especially here in Nigeria. I mean, the tensions are high, the economic reality is biting hard, so tempers are very short. So we need to get it right. Let's see if we can reconnect with Austin. Austin, if you can hear us, just go ahead and tell us what is happening where you're at.
First and foremost, Barika the Salah to our Muslim brothers. Of course, it's still in the spirit of Salah. And yesterday was the big Salah that was experienced across the globe. And here in Delta State, they began the event yesterday with the Eid prayers. And thereafter, they went back to their various homes and to begin the merriment and the celebration. Of course, we are in Muslim-dominated area here in Asaba, the Cable Point. Please, sir, please come forward, sir. Sir. Hello, please, this way, sir.
Nice DJ. Please, okay.
Come, step here. Okay, while we are waiting for Terminal Selfie to come forward to speak to us how the Salah was celebrated with his family yesterday. Okay, sir, how did you celebrate the Salah yesterday with your family?
Thank God as we get healthy. The Salah has come for us in critical condition. But God help us, and then we do the Salah with happiness. And then the government of Delta State help us and give us good ram. We Muslims, we are staying in Delta State. And then the Delta State people, they are cooperating with us. There is no any wahala. We have a security intact in Delta State. We are happy to the governor of the state. So I don't have anything to say. All right, next year.
Okay, apart from that, were you able to buy ram for yourself and your family?
Yes, I try my best and buy. I try my best. I buy ram, 2 ram. So I thank God for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have Umaru Musa. Umaru Musa, please step forward a little. Okay, talk to us. How were you able to celebrate your Salah yesterday?
We celebrate Salah yesterday very comfortable. We are very happy to celebrate Salah yesterday. The Salah we celebrate very nice. We saw some people discussing and dancing and playing. We thank God for Salah. God make us we celebrate Salah in peace, and we thank God for that Salah we celebrate.
Okay, now the federal government declared public holiday for Muslims to observe this Salah. What are you doing with the public holiday today?
What I am doing for the public holidays today, we kill ram today. My parents kill ram. They are cooking the ram. They make suya. You know, as we are making suya, they are making suya and give some people, any stranger or someone else you know, or friends you know, Christian or Muslim, you can take it to him. Yes.
All right. Another one is that is it compulsory for one to slaughter ram?
It's not compulsory. If you didn't have money, it's not compulsory to consummate lamb. But if you have money, you can do that. But it's not compulsory. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Musa. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry. Okay. How did you celebrate your Salah yesterday?
Good morning and happy Salah to all Nigerians. We thank God to Almighty Allah that give us these days. Today we see this Eid Kabir. This Salah is showing us peace and unity. Islam is matter of peace. And we congratulate all Nigerians, since from the president to our governor and all the senator, all the House of Assembly that take this part of Salah and give the holidays of the Salah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, one thing that comes with the Salah is big cultural events.
Yes.
We are currently at a Muslim-dominated community here in Asaba.
Yes.
Are we going to experience any cultural events here today?
Yes, they have a cultural singing. We are singing at the other mosques around 3, 4 this evening. You should come and entertain us with our people there. We have some prayer and dancing. We dance for the Salah celebration. We can do it today by the grace of God.
Another aspect that was talked about during the sermons across the country yesterday is the aspect of peaceful coexistence.
Yes.
Now, what is a message to Muslims and our Nigerian leaders?
My message is to all Nigerians from the head to the toe, both the youth and the children. This Salah is a matter of to say peace with your neighbor person. Even if you are a Muslim or Christian, you all are celebrating the Salah. We celebrate it together. And we are advising everybody to take everybody along. We are together. And we thank our Governor Sharif for how he take all of us together. He shows us love so much in this state. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Judith and Ezewike, you quite agree with me that Muslims in Delta State here, precisely in Asaba, they enjoyed their day yesterday. And of course, in continuation of the Salah, they have actually said that they're going to have a lot of merriment in the evening. So if you can make your way down to Asaba here to have that taste of it, that would be nice. I believe they'll be quite happy.
I would like a taste of fresh suya. We can't make it to Asaba, but I'm sure you can sort of waybill it to us. Tell those folks that we need that fresh suya.
Don't mind him. He's being mischievous as always. Well, Austin, many thanks. We appreciate you for coming on. And please don't, if you stuck your teeth with all the remnants of the Salah meat, please know that we need this for tomorrow for the news. If you know what I mean. Thank you. Also, as well, correspondent live from Asaba, Delta State, they are speaking to...
Sent to your inbox.
And we're going to give us sights and sounds there from Asaba, the capital of Delta State, as speaks to Muslim faithfuls. We bring you more updates and much more sights and sounds for the Eid celebrations. We will also be bringing you the colors, the sights, the sounds, the celebratory mood that is happening in Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, and that's going to be the Ojudu Oba. There we go. Hopefully I got it correctly.
Yeah, you know, it was what gave us that steez.
Yeah, hopefully we get another viral moment as well this time around. I was looking forward to that. Everyone has descended in Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, so we'll bring you all the sights and sound, but this time we're going to switch gears now as we bring you our very first big story for today. Felicity.
Yes, indeed. Our big story will be breaking down the issues making headlines and shaping conversations across Africa. If you've ever transferred money, bought airtime, or checked your bank balance using USSD codes, this story is for you. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has issued a new directive, one that is stirring debates and raising eyebrows. Telecom users will now have their USSD services charges deducted directly from their airtime. That's right. No longer will banks handle the billing directly. Instead, your mobile phone will get those deductions from it. This followed the prolonged 250 billion naira dispute between banks and telcos.
Absolutely. So while the NCC says the move ensures transparency and protects telecom infrastructure, critics argue that it will only further burden consumers already dealing with rising costs. Well, tell us about it. So the question is, what does this mean for the average Nigerian, and how does this change affect the long-standing tension between the banks and the telcos? Well, joining us this morning to unpack these are two important guests. The very first is the senior tech analyst at NiMet, is Samson Akintaro. He joins us live as well, virtually, I beg your pardon. Also joining us is Frank Ileanya. He's a senior tech writer at Tech Kabao. Frank, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's just get to it and ask you to give us a bit of a background on the disputes that led to this new NCC directive. What were the banks and telcos fighting over?
All right, so effectively it was about who collects the fees for USSD. Over time, the banks had argued that USSD technology was a redundant technology that they discovered, while riding on telecom infrastructure, and they sort of made it what it was today by using it for transactions. That it was them that made it popular, and also that if it was really about using it to boost financial inclusion across Nigeria, which is really what the USSD is for. And so that argument had started over a long time ago, but the telcos were like, this infrastructure that you're talking about, we are the ones who invested in it, we are the ones who brought it, we laid it, and you riding on it doesn't remove the fact that we are still paying for it while you are riding on it. And what that means is that whatever fees that you collect from it, we want a share of it. And the bone of contention here is that the amount of money, the amount of USSD transactions in Nigeria has sort of increased over time. As at last year, first half of last year, 2024, what the value of transactions for USSD was around 2.16 trillion naira. So that's a lot of money if you calculate the fact that for each transaction that was carried out, 6 naira 98 kobo will be deducted from it. So if you calculate that and then extrapolate, how many billions of naira that is and that the telcos are looking at. So over time, the telcos have been like, this money belongs to us. This fee belongs to us because this is our infrastructure. We are the ones that maintain it. We are the ones that ensure that it keeps running. And for you to take it and then put it on your balance sheet and tell your shareholders it's part of your revenue, it's not proper. So there has been interventions between the CBN and also the NCC, trying to bring truce between the two parties, and it hasn't been as effective as it should be. The banks had not been forthcoming in terms of repaying whatever was owed, so the telcos started piling up the debt. So every period of time, they're telling us how much the banks owe them. And then part of that tension led to the telcos giving ultimatums that if their money is not paid, they're going to have to plug or switch off the USSD technology that the banks were riding on. And even though the banks try to, project like the USSD isn't so much important to us in the electronic banking system, but it is very important to them actually. I mean,
right.
Aside from the fact that they collect 6.98 naira as fees, there's also the charges that they charge you once you make a transaction, so all that fees go to the bank. So the telcos are like, give us the 6.98 naira. So that's what has led us to this point where we are currently.
Now, I mean, Frank, the NCC is saying that they're purporting this directive as a mechanism to ensure transparency between the telcos and the banks. But in your view, is there going to be any transparency at all? And will this be beneficial as well, giving and what would it mean for the future of USSD in the telcos and whether the banks as well? Because, like you rightfully put, e-banking and the cashless policy in and of itself is a huge driver for our economy, and everyone relies. I mean, majority of the banks and the telcos, they rely on this USSD. Would that deter users from using it? Would there be transparency? What's your analysis?
So it is a shift, if I look at it that way. It's a shift from where we're coming from, where the telcos didn't actually know how much the banks were collecting from, or the total that the banks were collecting, because nobody was reporting anything. Many of the banks were not forthcoming, again, like I said, in bringing back whatever it is that they collected from subscribers. So arriving here, sort of, tell subscribers what exactly you're paying for. If it's 6.98 you're being deducted at every 120 seconds of a transaction that you carry out, you at least know, okay, within that 120 seconds, I'm going to be able to finish this USSD transaction. If for any reason why you have to extend the time, that means you pay maybe around 13 naira for that particular transaction that you're making. So I think in that respect, you can say that's transparency. It is different from what we used to have before, where you didn't know whether you were charged for per session, you didn't know whether you were charged for per service, whatever time it was and all that. So there was no clarity of what you were charged for. So I think now, from the customer perspective, it is an improvement, and from the telco perspective, I think it's also a good thing for them, because it removes this entire friction, like I've said before, between them and the bank. So they're no longer threatening anyone. They're no longer saying we're going to withhold services, and it also removes that tension also from the subscriber side. They're not expecting that this USSD technology is going to be switched off anytime or anyhow, So, and it sort of maybe will forge a better relationship between the telcos and the banks, It might be a big loss, for the banks, which from the word go, it wasn't supposed to be, because that money didn't belong to the banks. It belonged to the telcos. But some banks had sort of like, used that money to do whatever it is that they were doing, and to project their profits and all that. It might be a huge loss for some of those banks, but it sort of brings a little bit more clarity in the industry, and makes everyone's life a lot more comfortable than it was.
While it is bringing clarity in the industry, I mean, we've been talking about the telcos and the banks, but there is a particular demography we've not really emphasized, and that's where I want you to go. The customers. This change is coming at a time when, first off, we had data increase. We're still grappling with that. And then we have the high cost of inflation. Could this drive users away from USSD altogether? Because the demography most affected are artisans and mostly folks who do small businesses and the likes.
Well, I don't think it will drive people away from USSD. Why? Is because USSD works whether you're using internet or not using internet, and the demography of people who don't have smartphones in Nigeria is still higher than those who are able to afford smartphones. So if you're still using a feature phone, you're not able to afford a smartphone, this is like the only technology that you have to transact business with your customer. So that extra 6 naira 98 kobo that you have to pay for that transaction it's not even extra because you've been paying it before, but it's just that before it was going to the banks, but now it is now charged to your airtime. So whichever way you were paying it before, So I don't see people saying we're not going to use USSD anymore. If you opt for mobile transfers, you necessarily have to have an internet. You necessarily have to buy airtime to do that. And of course, there's also the option of going to a POS agent to make that transaction. Then you have to now weigh the cost of maybe paying 100 naira for every 5,000 naira transaction, or maybe 200 or 300 naira for every 10,000 naira transaction. So the USS is like an option that the subscribers have. You can decide, I don't want to use it. There's even been an argument that the USSD is not going to be here for the long term in the sense that if more people get to have smartphones, get to embrace more internet consumption, we probably would not have to deal with USSD.
I mean, that's going to be a really long time. I don't see my mother, for instance, wanting, you get her a smartphone, she doesn't know how to use it. So mobile phones without the internet access and stuff will continue to be, especially in our rural communities.
And just to think about it, USSD in and of itself, besides just the bank transactions, there's also you to credit your phone as well. When you need to credit your phone or buy data on your mobile phone, USSD is needed when you need to recharge something or you are buying something online. The short codes that they send to you, they're all USSD. So the truth of the matter is it's here to stay. It's not going to be eradicated completely. But let's talk about the pushback, right? You referred to that earlier. The pushback from the telcos, that they say that they still want the banks to handle, the billing. Why are they resisting airtime deductions despite the NCC directive?
I think that conversation is still is still ongoing. I've spoken to quite a number of telcos, and they are still trying to iron out how the modalities will be implemented. It hasn't been implemented. Nobody has started paying with their airtime yet. I'm told probably sometime next week, maybe, but before the end of June. It should be implemented, but they need to align with the banks how it is going to go. I think it's that initial thing where something new comes in and you're wondering how is this going to play out, what's really going to happen, so you're trying to look at all the parameters that are available so that you don't lose anything. I don't think an MTN, for instance, will want to continue giving the banks that money, given the fact that MTN, for instance, account for about 80% of USSD transactions in Nigeria. Only MTN. So if they have that amount of control, and they are the most owed according to their last financial year report, they said they were owed around 74 billion naira, and they have recovered so far 32 billion naira after the CBN and the NCC intervened and said that every bank that's owing, if they refuse to pay, that the money will be deducted from source, directly from the bank's account. So the banks have started paying them. So they have recovered so far 32 billion, which means that they have around a deficit of about 42 billion to recover. So I don't think they.
I do not understand how, entities like these or corporations like these would be owing amounts to the tunes of billions, and just let it run. I mean, for how long are you just going to sit there and your bill is piling up and you guys go for conferences and shake hands? Doesn't make, anyway, keep going.
So it pays MTN to ensure that money comes directly to their account and not to maybe a UBA's account or an Access Bank account. So they now have to go and sit down again and start doing reconciliation with them, which will drag again, or maybe something comes up and all of that. I don't think they want to do that. So on their part, I can say confidently that they will not they will go the direction of the airtime. It helps them. Maybe telcos like NiMobile, who don't currently have so much subscribers to deal with, might not be so receptive, maybe because of the debt they are owing the banks and all of that, so some of those obligations that they have compiled might be tied into it and all that. But I think for larger players, this is a good thing for them. So it's just to iron out how is this going to play out, how is it going to be done. For instance, there's a provision of this current directive that says that the subscriber will have to assent to a prompt from the bank before the money is deducted, and the bank has to be. It is when the bank is have seen that consent and is present that they will deduct it. So I think all of that technicalities will have to be fleshed out so that there's more clarity around it. I think that if it's airtime that you're going for, just do it already. I mean, deduct it from the airtime, nothing like a prompt or something. So long as somebody has started a USSD transaction means that the person consent to being charged a USSD fee. All that, I will send a consent to you, and all that is just banks maybe bringing up technicalities into it. So I think that's what's currently happening, and that discussion is going to be concluded perhaps sometime next week.
I was going to ask you about a long-term fix, but you have said that Nigeria should be moving beyond USSD. It might take a minute, but it will happen. But from your vantage point of view, what would be your advice to consumers, customers who use this service, maybe to allay fears or to, think of alternatives, perhaps, to using USSD?
Okay, so there are alternatives. I mean, it depends on how deep your pocket is. So if you've got a smartphone, you can use your mobile transfers. You can also walk down the street and use your POS agents to do that. But beyond that is the fact that if one of the things that the telcos have said when they talk about poor internet quality is that they don't have enough capital to deploy because of how regulatory issues of all of that is this as well. Right. So being able to rectify these issues sort of puts them in a position where you can now say, okay, you've got your money, give us quality internet. So it's time to hold them accountable. You've got to demand a little bit more from your telco to say, I mean, we've resolved the issue of your USSD debt that has been prolonged. So now you need to focus on providing us with quality internet. So time to hold them accountable while also you're exploring the other options. Right. And technology evolves. There's always going to be a new payment system that's going to come up, and people are going to embrace it. So let's be on the lookout for that. Again, it's a function of how well you're prepared in terms of smartphone ownership and internet connectivity, the quality of it.
I mean, Frank, this has been quite my huge takeaway from this at the end of the day is that there has to be better accountability and, and most importantly, hold up all stakeholders to account. It's not about dragging your money. It's about providing services that is, world-class standards and meet best practices around the world. And Nigerians deserve better. We're paying out of pocket every single day. We're paying all of this cost. We must at least just have good internet and better services.
I am hopeful. I am hopeful that we'll see that reality. Thanks again, Frank, for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, Frank Alea, he's a senior tech writer at Tech About. Joined us this morning. Many thanks.
I should mention we introduced Samson earlier. He was supposed to join us from NiMet, but we couldn't establish connection. So we apologize for that and hope we can have Sam some other time.
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, let's switch gears, shall we? Let's go on a short break. When we return, this time is going to be on the reps. And they're going after workplace. And this time, bribery in workplace should be fined. And maybe jail terms after the break. Stay with us. Yes.
Very glad you're still here. Let's turn our attention now to a bold legislative move set to be aimed at curbing corruption in one of its most pervasive forms, bribery in the workplace. Now, the House of Representatives has passed a bill seeking to criminalize bribery in both public and private institutions. The proposed law prescribes a 7-year jail term or a 5 million naira fine or both for anyone found guilty of giving or receiving bribes at the workplace. From employment kickbacks and contract facilitation fees to settling HR for job placements, the bill is Nigeria's latest attempt to close the loopholes that allow corruption to thrive under the radar of big headlines.
But how enforceable is this legislation? And can it fully address the deep-seated culture of something for something in many Nigerian workplaces? Or better yet, scratch my back, I scratch your back. Well, joining us to unpack the legal and social implications of the proposed law is Akintayo Iwitade. He's a legal practitioner and he joins us live virtually. Akintayo, a very good morning to you and Eid al-Kabir to you as well.
Baraka de Salah to all
Baraka
of us.
de Salah.
Yes, thank you.
I mean,
the name is Iwilade.
Iwitade, thank you so much. I mean,
Iwilade.
Iwitade. Akintayo, let's get Iwilade. I'm sorry, Iwilade. There we go. What's your initial reaction to this proposed legislation by the by the House of Representatives? I beg your pardon. Is this a necessary step in Nigeria's anti-corruption fight?
I thank you once again for being here with on the show this morning, and I kick off from exactly where you started. I like the initial point you made as to the question of enforceability. I would even like to take it a little step further by indicating that I am not quite as excited with this proposition, and I say this because there's no deficit of laws in Nigeria as of today that has not significantly, in many respects, addressed these same issues that is today being supposedly propped up all over again. I mean, anyone reading the news headlines and all of that, as you are very correctly and very rightly itemized, would think that perhaps there are no existing laws in Nigeria that already deal with subjects of bribery, corruption in public office, corruption in the workplaces, and all of those things. That if you look through, if we scan through the whole spectrum of our statute books, both at the federal level and at the state levels, there are more than legion of laws that have been enacted, that have been promulgated over the years on this subject of corruption in so many forms. You can talk of the Code of Conduct Act, you can talk of the criminal laws, both at the federal level and at various state levels. You can talk of even the laws that created institutions like the ICPC, the EFCC, and all sorts of laws. So there's a whole lot that exists in our criminal books already, criminal statutes already, that speak to the subject of bribery, to the subject of corruption, to the subject of illegitimate acquisition of wealth, to the subject of receiving unlawful kickbacks, unlawful gifts, and all of those sort of things. It doesn't matter the nomenclature you call it bribery, call it kickbacks, call it unexplained wealth, and all those things, those laws exist. And so that's why I like where you started from when you mentioned the subject of how enforceable is it. The real issue in Nigeria has always been the question of how well are the laws being enforced, and what is the quality of leadership that we've seen over the years in Nigeria that leads by example and sets the right tone for the citizenry to follow, whether in the private sector, whether in the public sector, or anywhere across the society. So what will this law be addressing?
I can tell you, let's
so many laws already do not address. That will be my first poser.
Let's pretend for a bit that this is really serious, you know, and that they intend to go through with it, and it becomes something. Let's just assume, even though, like you rightly pointed out, we don't have a problem with laws, but implementation. One of the input for this bill is that there will be some sort of committee in the EFCC whose responsibility will be to be taking on these chores. It is targeting not just givers but receivers of bribe in the workplace from a legal standpoint. How difficult will it be to prove these cases in court, and considering that we are not satisfied per se with all that the EFCC is doing to fight corruption in the country, I mean, depending on who you're speaking to, isn't this adding too much to what they're already doing?
Exactly the point that at this point it's beyond just creating layers and layers of theoretical laws, creating committees here and there, creating, it doesn't matter what we call it, having all sorts of anti-corruption summits and all of that. The question still remains that over the years, and in spite of all of the best efforts that has been attempted to be made in the country to fight this scourge, how well have we fared? And by adding another layer to the already burdensome responsibilities of institutions like the EFCC, are we, for example, saying that EFCC does not already have the capacity, not necessarily capacity, does it not already have the mandate to go about and go after such incidents, particularly even the ICPC, the police, and all of that? So I think that, the subject of leadership has been spoken about. I mean, it's almost like a broken record to say that leadership is key across all levels in Nigeria to set the right tone for the followership. But in terms of looking at how to solve this hydra-headed problem, especially in the space of public service, I would say that one of the things the legislature probably should begin to think around is how to automate many government services. We know that there is a way that if you automate government services as much as possible, deploying technology, deploying innovation, that ensures that as much as possible, as much as humanly possible, human contact with officials, particularly in public service, because essentially, what do you really as citizens, what are your engagements with the public services? Maybe you want to get an approval for some building plan. Maybe you want to register your company. Maybe you want to apply for your citizenship IDs, like your driver's license, your passport as a Nigerian, and all of those services. Maybe you need to get some approval to advance your business that are already. If we can focus a bit on de-emphasizing and depersonalizing human contact in some of the services that government renders, you would gradually be able to eliminate some of these naughty points where the old bribery for services, where they are, because it all speaks to efficiency and inefficiency. So when the system is clogged, where there's a whole lot of inefficiency in the system, where there's one file that has been hidden since for donkey years, and there's no technological system that has automated those things. So take, for example, look at the wonderful work the current Minister of Interior is doing. The fact that he is, taking steps to try to reduce the contact, particularly people in the diaspora. I don't know how well that is being done within the country yet, but I understand, and from what I've seen in the news, that you would now have, there's an attempt to ensure that there's contactless applications. You see it also with what is going on with a few other institutions of government, where most of your applications will just simply go on a technology platform, and that way, when you are not in contact as much as possible, it reduces that. But does that solve the overall problem of corruption in the society? No, it doesn't. It just helps to ameliorate that in those areas. So as much as possible, we should be thinking very seriously about digitalizing public services in particular. And the private sector too should take a cue from that. And the private sector is already doing a bit of all of that. I'm sure you recall in those days when maybe you want to do a bank transfer, you want to do you have to go into the banking hall. For vast majority of most transactions today, most of those transactions are now done online. That reduces even the contact. You need to even be in contact with someone before you can offer a bribe or receive.
But
the bigger picture, okay, very well.
Right. I mean, I can tell you the digitalization I want to see is in our universities. I want to see it so bad, and it's not just. I mean, they are beginning to adopt those because you're citing the common forms of workplace bribery that we're seeing in Nigeria. You're citing all of that, and to reduce human contact when it comes to such payments is very important. But the universities have been able to do this, but they still need those teachers that you have to take the teller to, and then the teller has to, or rather, take the teller to a receptionist who will now issue you a receipt. But for you to get the receipt, you still have to buy, something from. It is insane. Then the Nigerian institution, universities, and another institution we need to throw in that category in terms of workplace bribery. But let's look at this bill because it includes provision for fines. Provision for fines or imprisonment, 7 years imprisonment, right? Do you think that these penalties are strong enough or too strong, to serve as deterrents, or should they even go further?
Yeah, pardon me once again if I do not take an exciting view of the proposed bill, because I would say that there are, as we speak today, there are penalties in existing laws that have long been passed. There are penalties as much as 14 years imprisonment. Some are 21, some are 7 for different categories of offenses. The question we ask ourselves is that how many of those things have actually really, really been enforced? So yes, I do agree that perhaps if there are some specific areas that legislators think has not been fully covered, I mean, there's always room for additional laws. But beyond just the laws, one of the things that also needs to happen is that how is the legislature also, are the legislative folks also doing their best to see that at the leadership level in Nigeria, what is the example being set at the leadership level? Even from the National Assembly itself, what is the leadership in anti-corruption, zero tolerance for corruption that the National Assembly itself is setting? What is leadership being set by the executive arm of government? What is the leadership being set by the judicial arm of government? So those are interrogations that also needs to happen, self-introspection that needs to happen. And that, so when we are looking at, because some of the things that we talk about as being one of these briberies that we see, for example, you referenced what happens maybe within the university systems, for example, where you see, particularly in some public universities, harrowing experiences people go through just to apply for transcripts because they, and all that sort of thing. Now, when all of those things, so that supports the view that all of those things should have been automated, and I do not really need to go meet a clerk or go sit down with a registrar or any official for me to be able to get a transcript, particularly if I'm already graduated from that institution. The records should already be there. And so that's a gap that needs to be filled. But the bigger picture is also the fact that the quality of governance in Nigeria really, really something that every leader at every level, whether it's legislative,
that's another, and I mean, we need an entire day to talk about governance in Nigeria. So
exactly.
We'll take that on another day, please. But I do share your lack of excitement about the bill for very obvious reasons. Some of them you've already stated. I'd like you to, though, expand a bit on the intersection between this proposed bill and the already existing anti-corruption law that we have in this country. If you could just maybe clarify for us, what even constitutes, what is the workplace policy? Is it the same thing across board?
Duplicity.
Yes, talk to us about that.
Yes, there's surely an overlap because the laws on bribery, the existing laws on bribery that you see in the criminal code, it doesn't necessarily distinguish between what bribery that happens in the workplace or the one that happens outside of the workplace. Bribery is bribery simpliciter. Once the elements of it are present within a particular transaction, it is simply bribery, whether, essentially when you demand or you receive, you demand or receive or give, as it were, an official some sort of gratification as a basis to obtain a service, that's already bribery. There's no distinction as to whether this happens in the workplace or it happens in the government house or it happens in a banking hall, in a company or whatever. So those laws are already there. But if what the legislators are looking at is to drill down to some sort of specialization, to say that, well, let us narrow down a bit more to the workplace, all well and good. I mean, I would say good luck to them if that's the sort of exercise they want to put some of their exertions on. But I would say that it really wouldn't necessarily shift the needle from the current corruption climate in Nigeria if all of the bigger issues are not resolved. And all those bigger issues, they begin from the leadership. They begin from even the extractive nature of the political system that we run. A political system that is so centralized, where it is a rent-seeking and extractive system that is not where governance is not decentralized, where the true federal structures are not in place to decentralize governance as much as possible to the autonomous units and all of that sort of thing. There is no way that such a system would not naturally be a breeding ground for corruption. So this law, I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, at the end of the day, it's legislative discretion for them to decide what law they want to pass. It is also our own responsibilities as citizens and your responsibility, which is part of what News Central is doing. And I must commend that you're taking the pains to look through what is going on and trying to hold some levels of conversations and accountability around what various arms of governments are doing. It is their responsibility to think that that's what they should do. It's also for the president to decide once such a bill is passed, if it is indeed passed, to decide whether that bill really is of any significant value. And in closing, I want to make one point. Look at the bill that so that was proposed at the House of Representatives recently about some compulsion for people to go and vote. By the time people like your good selves in the fourth estate of the REMA, several other conscientious Nigerians spoke to it, they saw the futility of that bill. That how do you compel people to vote in an environment where the votes don't count? And how do you even make it a mandatory duty for citizens to vote? It's a civic duty, but it's not something to be criminalized. But reason prevailed, and from what I've seen in the news, they've dropped that. I think they need to look a bit closely at this current law and see whether it's not just a mere duplication, whether it's not just banding around buzzwords and dumping them into another fresh legislation that will just acquire more paper without any real impact in society. The leadership question is critical. The federal system is critical. Decentralizing authority is critical. Depersonalizing government services is extremely important. Deploying technology to remove human contact as much as possible so that you can reduce this thing from the scratch, and then you can deal with the knotty issues going forward.
I mean, Nigeria deals with bureaucracy and red taping a lot, but there's also another factor of this that we're not looking at. And I know that, we all share your sentiments as regards this bill, right? But beyond laws and penalties, there's something that we need to look at, and that's a cultural aspect of this, or our cultural mindsets regarding, the workplace. There's tips, which sometimes you are certainly coerced to do it, right? There's also favoritism as well, that sometimes you're coerced to do it. There's also gifts in kind, and all of that put together. How can we shift, if you were to look at this critically, removing our sentiments in this bill, how are you going to factor all of this into this bill in the classic Nigerian professional setting? Just humor me. I'm curious.
Yes, I think you made the very you hit the right point by referencing some of the cultural norms and all that. I would just say that generally, culturally, we are not a people who believe, and across all cultures in Nigeria, we're not the people who believe in unearned status, unearned income, unearned status, and all of those sort of things. Most of what we see that appears to now look at the order of the day, all of these things were not always like this. So we've got to reconcile to this reality that culture itself evolves. So if you see a society where it looks like everything now appears to be things that were hitherto unheard of, now appears to be normalized, we've got to look at where, like the great Chino Achebe would say, that you check where the rain began to beat you. And we've got to look back a bit back into time, that in the era that we call the golden era of Nigeria, especially the early independence years, most of these things were not pervasive things. Most of the things that we see that bedevil the country today, the complete, almost, everyday normalized corruption,
right.
the insecurity.
I can tell you, we're out of time for this conversation, but I just want to squeeze this one in, and if you can respond in 40 seconds, that would be great. The proposed bill is relying, in my belief, on whistleblowing. Do we have a history that favors whistleblowers in this country? Because it seems to hinge on the goodwill of people to be bold enough to want to put their lives at risk to report this. Does our history encourage some positive look at this bill?
Snitches get snitched or get snipped.
Yes, it doesn't. The truth is that if the governance climate in Nigeria, if the people do not feel sufficiently connected, if they do not feel that the leadership in society across all levels are really looking after the best intent of the people, you are not even going to move the needle on the whistleblowing thing.
Right.
Yes, there is a whistleblowing policy existing.
Yes.
There is all of that. But to what extent has that been effective? I think the answer is blowing in the wind. It has not been effective, and I don't see how any new law will necessarily change that. The challenge with Nigeria begins first from the leadership question. Once the leadership puts the country on the right path, we'll be surprised at how quickly every follower will also align. After all, we obey the laws when we're out of the country.
Right.
We obey the laws when we're out. It's about the climate and the system created. So let's create that in Nigeria and see that we are indeed a wonderful people who would align very quickly, depending on the tone that our leader sets.
All right. Barrister, I must say thank you for taking out the time to join us. The candle for this conversation has now blown in the wind and the lights are out. Barrister Akintaya Iwi Tade, he's a legal practitioner, and he brought us a bit of valuable insight as reps are pushing for fines and imprisonment on bribery and corruption in the workplace. Once again, many thanks. We appreciate you for coming on. Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, we switch to Ogun State, Ijebu Day, as we have Igbalani Omoni on standby to give us the colors, the sights, the sounds, and the celebrations of Ojode Oba after the break.
All right, let's now step into the vibrant world of Ojode Oba, a centuries-old festival that embodies the rich cultural heritage of the Ijebu people in Nigeria. This spectacular celebration, which translates to in front of the King's Palace, is a dazzling display of tradition, pageantry, and community spirit. For generations, the festival has been a cherished event showcasing the Ijebu's deep-rooted customs and infectious enthusiasm. We got the steez from the last episode. We even had the guest here at News Central talk about how he became quite famous from being part of that celebration.
Now, as the festival begins, and it comes alive with music, dance, and horsemanship today and tomorrow, we're going to be joined by our guest. Our guest is Chief Mrs. Ayodele Oreagba. She joins us live virtually. Chief Oreagba, we appreciate you for coming on, and a very good morning to you, madam.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I mean, this is a very remarkable, celebration, cultural celebration that brings all of the indigents of Ijebu gathered to celebrate it. But let's start with the history, right? How did Ojode Oba Festival, have spanned over the years to become the iconic festival that it is today?
Thank you very much. As far as I know, I've been part and parcel of Ojode Oba for the past 70 years or more. I come from a family where they ride the horses on my mother's side. and that is the Koko family. And when I got married, my husband's family also participate and ride the horses. And this is done during the, we call it Ileya. The meaning of Ileya is Wasile Nigbodun. So if you are from Ijebu, especially Ijebu Ode, you must participate. Whether you are a Muslim or a Christian, the only difference is that the Muslim will kill the ram, the cow, and then the Christians and other people will come and greet you and participate. So, Ojudeoba in Ijebu Ode is for everybody, and it is a time that we love, and we always like to share jollity, we call it. And so it goes from generation to generation. The Kabiyesi, well, since I started the Ojudeoba, there's always only one Awujale, the Ogbagba II, Oba Sikiru Adetono. He had been on the throne for over 60 years. And we love him, and he puts modernization to how we do the Ojudeoba. The Ojudeoba used to be for few people who will ride the horse, but now some family have over 100 horses, and everybody will wear the same Ankara, big or small. And recently, the Kabiyesi introduced another one, which we call Regbe Regbe. In the Regbe Regbe, they pay homage to the Kabiyesi, and they wear the same gorgeous, well-dressed people. They are proud, and in this Regbe Regbe, it belongs to Christians and Muslims. So we all come out and dance.
All right, Chief Oragba. Oragba, yes. If you can hear me, I'm trying to interject to ask you another question. I mean, even for those who don't follow the festival religiously, we all know about the horse riding, and we're hoping you can tell us more about it. But what other activities come up during this festival that might not get as much popularity as the horse riding?
The horse riding, as I said earlier, I've been on before I was born, and it is what we do on every year. What has been added, and that was what I was saying, is the Regbe aspect. The Regbe aspect make it more elaborate. The Regbe will pay homage and leave. Then when the horse riders will come in family by family, and it is what it is. It has been very popular, but as our children join us on the horse riding, it becomes modernized, because these children are highly educated, and they've been outside the country, and they want to put glamour, yes, to what they are doing, and that's what is making it popular.
Okay, Chief.
However,
Chief, in the interest of time, I want you to talk to us about how this festival is promoting the culture and traditions of the Ijebu people, and what people should, you know, learn from it.
It is the togetherness in Ijebu. There's one thing about Ijebu. Who is your father? Very proud people. And if your father had committed an offense some years, nobody will give you honor and respect. So those who are coming are people of integrity and who are educated. For example, what happened last Ojudeogba? My husband's nephew, Farouk Adedayo Reagba, being a glamorous young man, was spotted on his horse, and it went viral, and so more people want to know what this Ojudeoba is all about. It has always been glamorous. It has always been attended by many people. But Farouk Adedayo Reagba, being somebody who is known all over, put more glamour to what we are doing. It is the same thing that we have been doing. And so, nothing special, nothing special.
Chief.
Yes.
But it is special for the Ijebu Ode people, and it is special for the viewers who are watching, and also those who are in diaspora as well, watching back home, and see how, you know, the future, the festival is still alive, vibrant, and colorful. And so what are we to be expecting today and tomorrow with the festival? And, you know, what's the future looking like? Because we're seeing brands come in as well to sponsor. We're seeing all the colors, you know, all the corporate communication, corporate brands who are stepping in to sponsor the event. So what's the future like for Ojudeoba Festival? But most importantly, what are we looking forward to for today?
Oh, you are looking forward to the same thing that we have been doing. And as I said, the children are put more glamour, and their friends are expecting to come and see what it is. Since yesterday, we have been riding the horses, dancing all over the town. Today there will be parties in many homes, and tomorrow, after the horse riding, there will be parties all over the town. The Dregberegbes will sit down and entertain. So it is what we are expecting. It's the glamour. You know, Ijebu people are glamorous people. They are proud people. They are people who have traveled all over the world. The Balogun Kuku is a very, very, very popular family because they have a lot of children, and the Ogbeni Oja,
okay.
Dr. Sonny Kuku,
all right, I want you
has made it to be born.
I want you to, I mean, a lot of people, tourists also want to come and experience this festival with Ijebu people. We know that it will spark some economic prospects for the community. Talk to us about what the impact has been, especially with, you know, the exposure that came from last year's celebration.
The Ijebu people, when I say Ijebu, especially Ijebu, they are people very who love business, like late Shubumi Balogun of FCMB. The Odutolas, and many other. If you come, there are many factories that are dormant. But with the people coming now and what is happening in Nigeria, many people will come and do business in Nigeria. And then do business in Ijebu, because Ijebu has all it takes to make it a glamorous town. The factories are there, but the economy was slow. But now that more people are coming and they know of Ijebu, definitely there will be prosperous and good business. And knowing that Ijebus are friendly people, then we are expecting industries and people in the corporate world to come and join us. If you come to Ijebu to invest, you will not regret it.
I certainly hope not.
We have we have the population, we have the education, and we are outward people. We love visitors, and I'm sure as more people are coming to Ijebu today and tomorrow, they are going to have a change of mind, and they are going to say, we are coming back. And when they come back, they will not regret it.
All right. Chief.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking us down memory lane, sharing the history about the Ojude Oba Festival. We appreciate your time, and we actually look forward to the sights and sounds from the Ijebu land.
Oh, yes, indeed. Chief Mrs. Ayo Oreagba Nikuku. She's the Yeye Mayegun of Ijebu.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a mistake there. I am Chief Mrs. Ayodele
Oreagba.
Ni Babayale.
Ni Babayale.
My mother, yes, my mother is from the Kuku family.
Ah.
And I grew up with the Kukus.
Ah, yes. Apologies for that mistake. Yes, apologies for that mistake. Apologies, ma'am. Ni Babayale Kuku. I appreciate you for coming on, ma'am. And congratulations to the people of Ujebode. All eyes are on the festival ahead tomorrow, Sunday, June 8th. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you for staying with Breakfast Extra. You're watching Extra Special now, the segment.
So, just a second, Felicity. We've been informed that our correspondent, who is in Jos Plateau State, she joins us live now, Chizoba Anyowe. She's going to join us to give us a bit of sights and sounds and a situational report on what's happening with the Eid celebrations in Plateau State. Chizoba, good morning to you.
Good morning, Judith.
Good morning. You're looking sharp and bright. I suspect you've had some Salah feastings from yesterday and today. Is my assumptions correct?
Unfortunately, your assumptions are so wrong because I'm not even saying not talk about eating, but it's also we keep doing what we know how to do best.
Oh, man. But tell us, how's the celebrations going in Jos there with you?
Okay, well, everybody has been doing what they are doing in a very peaceful manner, going about their lawful businesses. And of course, the Muslim Ummah have been up and about everywhere celebrating Salah in the best way they can. You know, just about the complaints of the harsh economy. That's no longer news now. Everybody's complaining, high cost of goods, commodities, services here and there. Unfortunately, they can do little or nothing about it. And so they just go by it. So whatever they can provide for themselves, their families and loved ones, they go ahead and do that. So many of them were not able to buy this ram, you know, for the sacrifice. And good enough, they said there's part of their belief that the Allah would also bless the intent of the person that would have loved to perform the sacrifice with the ram. But unfortunately, because of one or two things beyond the person's control, will not be able to slaughter the ram. So that aside, but I mean, generally on the plateau, it's been a peaceful Salah celebration. In fact, if you can see behind me, some shops are yet to be opened. This is Garden Power area of Jos, where you have so many of the Muslim faithful living around here. And up till now, you can see those shops are still closed. Even in front of me, you can turn around so they can also see that most of the shops are yet to be opened. Ordinarily, by 7:30, 8 a.m., shops are open, businesses are going on, but today is past 10 a.m. and the shops are yet to be open. And it's just because of the Salah celebration. Everybody is happy, celebrating, having some time to rest. So usually that's just the top of it on the celebration of Salah.
As we were speaking, some sharply dressed youngsters passing, probably going to some celebration for the date. Talk to us, is there maybe a public event to be held later today to commemorate the celebration, or perhaps gatherings for further celebration?
Okay, so usually there's no event, so to speak, maybe organized by an individual or government or any organization. None of that. What they usually do is later in the evening, say like 4 or 5 p.m. Nigerian time, they gather at the recreational areas around, at the museum, at the zoo, and all those places. So have fun, like a picnic, you know, together with.
Okay, I think we have a bit of a challenge with the audio from Chizoba's end. Let's see if we can establish that and interject as we go to get further update on what's happening in Jos. But for now, as I was saying before, we had to bring in Chizoba, is extra special segment of the Breakfast Extra, where we take a closer look at stories that have everyone talking. The headlines have sparked more questions than answers. Now, this one sounds almost unbelievable for those who have not been following, but it is true and very deeply troubling. An 18-year-old apprentice in Ogun State has reportedly impregnated 10 girls within a span of 5 months. Yes, you heard that right, 10 girls. The story, which quickly made rounds online, has reignited debates around teen sexuality, moral values, community accountability, and the glaring gaps in sex education and parenting.
But the question is, how did we get here? Is this just an isolated scandal, or does it reveal a broader moral breakdown in our society, or worse, a systemic failure in raising and protecting our young people, particularly the boys? So joining us to explore these critical issues are two guests. But first, and they're coming from different faith and family perspectives. But here in the studio, we're going to get started with Mr. Tolu Awobi, is the head of Unit Marriage Enrichment, the Covenant Nation. Tolu, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. A very saddening story. An 18-year-old boy. It begs to ask the question: was attending sex education classes when he was 13, 14? Does he not know the anatomy, I beg your pardon, of his body and what it means when he gets to that point? For the other girl, also 10 children in 5 months. Is he trying to be, Father Abraham, or I don't know? There's just so much that it rides on your head. But more importantly is, when you heard this story, what stuck out to you first?
Well, what jumps out immediately is who are the parents of both the boy and the girls who have been laid to in the way of pregnancy. And it boils back to the heart of society. I always say that the heart of society is the home. Where are you coming from? What's your orientation? What kind of learning did you have when you were growing up? Again, we've come into a world where people think that we should just throw things up in the air, make no rules, and find out what the outcome is. This is the outcome of throwing things into the air. Now, I remember that when I served, I served in Jos, interestingly. There was a particular young man who came to fix he came to do some carpentry work for me. And this boy is about 17, and at 7 a.m. in the morning, he's drunk, right? And so while he's, going through this conversation, I engage him and try to, what's going on with you? And, I start to, probe him, and I find out that this boy has about maybe 12 kids.
At 17?
At 17. I'm like, what's going on with you? How is that even possible? He's like, I'm just having sex. Like, I didn't go to school. I now have a job. I can make some money. I can give the girl some money. I buy her a plate of food. She's ready to lie down. I sleep with her. I don't remember I slept with her. 9 months later, there's a baby. And
I don't remember I slept with her.
I don't remember I slept with her. And you see, because we live in Lagos and in, society, we think that that's how the world is. Outside Lagos, just outside Ogun State, thank God this is a story just in Abeokuta, right? You see that the life they live there is completely different from the life we're living here. There is such abject poverty. And when we talk about poverty, we're not talking about money. We're talking about even education, exposure, understanding of how life is supposed to be. Now, I'm going to take us on a quick run back. How did society govern itself before we came into this modernity that we have? Right, let's do a flashback. My grandma told me a story. I'm sorry, I'm a storyteller. I make movies for a living. Yes. My grandma said, I asked her, how did you get married to somebody who's almost 40, 50 years older than you? because she was the last wife of 6 women. And she said, I was born a princess, right? But age 17, one day my dad tells me I should follow his, one of his, men, orderlies that they will be right now. And they took her to the house of a wealthy man for all of her property. Sat her there, put a keg of water in front of her and said, sit here, stay here until the owner of this house returns from wherever he's coming. When he comes back, tell him that the king says, you are now married to this child. And, he hit me like, what is going on?
Does that still happen today? Because, I mean, that's a couple of years ago.
This is, I hope this is not
okay, let's not deviate it because we are time constrained for conversations like this. I'd like you to speak on, you talk about the life that we have here and the life that is in other places. It might not be the same. And we're hearing this story because somebody came out and because the person was at a loss of what actions to take to seek a response. Is this more a systemic failure? Because I do know that growing up, even while I was just out of secondary school, I used to do adult classes, teach adults how to read and write, but without the basic education, even those that are adults should get the opportunity to learn. So is it a failure, systemic failure of all of us? And how do we go about repairing? You also talked about the home. I have a little concern about that because the family dynamics is different. And the society, however we want to look at it, it cannot be, a smooth plane. There has to be, ups and downs, different levels of living and conditions and all of that. Take that on.
So again, I feel like we over-prioritize what we think is our intellectual powers. Before we came up with all this intelligence and all these educational systems and all these things that we had, how did we govern ourselves, right?
Fair question.
Now, whether we like it or not, Africa existed before the colonialism, where we then introduced this education, which unfortunately... No,
but that might be a bit of a contradiction of what you just said, because in time past, your grandmother was taken. So if that kind of governance existed then, if it is in today's society, the whole nation will be in uproar. Right. There might be some
if I finish the story...
But there's a difference here, right? The mother, whoever this young lady is, your grandmother, whoever it was taken and said, this is your husband. And so there was some sort of Puritan approach to it in terms of you are not philandering, right? Or you're not experimenting sex. And the only time you can experiment. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say in terms of,
because I then asked her, I said, why would he do this? It feels so, just random and, evil, as far as I'm concerned. And she then explained to me that it wasn't evil. In retrospect, now that she was much older, she understood that because she was the daughter of a king, right? She didn't want, it was rampant then that a man would just see a fine girl, jump on her, get her pregnant. Same thing happening, right? And so the king, to protect her, made her a married woman.
At 17. That's another layer.
So exactly, that's another layer. So when you see in the north, you see there's this thing going on where you marry off a 13-year-old and like, why would you do that? There was a reason. Now, I'm Christian and I do not subscribe to any of that such behavior. But if you understood how the home unit became the society unit, right? If you saw the connection between it, you begin to understand, oh, this was how, we protected ourselves when there was no systemic protection. How do you ensure that the girl does not end up, abused severely? She needs to have a covering. She's in your house as a child. After some time, she must go into motherhood or into, wifehood or whatever that is. So back in the day, they would take, I want my daughter to be your wife. It seemed like it was control, but what they were doing was protecting the society so that you don't have a lot of girls that are getting
So we need to evolve new ways.
Now, for the world to evolve, you must understand where you're coming from. Now, a lot of the people, we in Lagos know that there's some rules that we live by. But the guy who's living in the, village, his father's giving birth to him, doesn't take care of him. The day he starts to make some money, he wants to sleep with someone. We need to also understand those systems and understand, okay, how do we help those systems? One of the ways you're mentioning is educating them, helping them understand the consequence. Like I said, this young man I met who says, I didn't even remember sleeping with her, right? It's 9 months ago, right? He's living his life on the nose. society has to find a way to govern itself, whether it's informal or in a formal way. And that's what we used to have in the old days. We had kings, we had rules, you can't touch this, you can't do that. And that's why it seemed like, why are all these rules there?
Right. I always come from the child psychology, behavioral, psychology point of view, right? And I'm looking at the ages of these children.
Correct.
So the boy is 18,
yes,
right? And we don't know if he just clocked 18 or is 18. And we only know of the 10 young girls because of this report. And that means there's a history there of promiscuity, correct, right? And we don't also know about the girls themselves, what their ages as well as if they have been experimenting, correct, or they have been, quite lax. I don't want to use promiscuity when it comes to young girls and women, right? But they have been experimenting and having multiple sexual partners. And so there's two things that stand out for me here. One, the prefrontal lobe of the brain of the young pre-teenage child, where the rush for them to want to experiment and try, and they're getting used to their body and they're excited to do it. There's one, right? So that intersection of that, and then two, social media that forces them. I mean, I may not even force, but like compel them, the peer pressure to want to try. And so I want you to talk about that and how, parents watching at home can be able to see those signs and be able to sit down and talk to them and be like, I know you feel the impulse.
Correct.
But it's not okay.
So I say this to you, first of all. Again, I come back to the fact that the family unit is the most responsible party. Now, a lot of times we want to push this into government, right? And government is supposed to provide the climate, the atmosphere, the environmental support for whatever is going on in the family unit. Now, if the family unit fails, what happens when a child is going through that, that experience? A parent who has experienced it before is supposed to be present to guide the child. Mm-hmm. Now, where there's an absence of parenting, we then end up with all this, the default behavior. Basically people just trying out things, right? Which is why we must consciously transfer right values, not the wrong values, the right values, and we continue to iterate our values, not that we keep all those olden days rules, but we must consciously transfer the right values from this generation to the next, because eventually a young boy who's sleeping around and having so many children will pay for it in the long run.
And not just children, multiple sexual partners as well, because there's STIs,
exactly. They're not. I think that that takes me to something I was thinking as you were talking, and that is sexual health education.
All right.
When is the right time? Because different dynamics, educated parents, non-educated parents, different cultural background, orientation, and all of that. What should be the minimum age where parents can begin to raise the conversation about sexual education for
as a parent myself? I started to speak to my kids pretty much as early as 5, and again, it's incremental information.
Yes. Yeah.
You basically can't talk about everything at the beginning, but you make them first conscious of their bodies. There's some places that are private. There's some places that are open. So a handshake is a public exchange of, affinity.
Yeah.
However, once the handshake begins to get beyond your elbows, it becomes something else. And kids are vulnerable, right? I remember once counseling a particular young lady who had been raped from the age of 3 to 11. Because her grandma used to leave her with this uncle in the same building. You can imagine the extent of trauma she's experienced, right? And so, again, can your teacher in school protect the child? No. It comes down to daddy and mommy. That responsibility to educate the child.
Well, there are some children who don't have parents. They don't have father, they don't have mother, they have guardians. There are also young teenagers in orphanages.
Correct.
So I'm just asking, beyond parents, for those, I mean, it is a basic right here in Nigeria that children should be educated. Even the Almajiris are getting some level of education.
Yes.
So how do we begin to fit this in? What is the appropriate time? And what I really don't know where to begin to ask this question.
See, again, I like the elements of system that we need to bring in with, but system must come off community, right? So where there's no parents, there were parents before that parents. There were brothers and siblings around that
communities
parents.
where
community
play
is
a key role in
also
raising
very,
children.
which is where, you know, the idea that, oh, it's my kids, don't talk to them.
It's always,
is absolutely wrong. We need to bring back those values. Where I remember when we used to play as kids those days, everybody feared my dad, right? Why? Because first thing is my dad is coming, we're off, you know, flying back home. He's coming back, and all the other kids are flying back home. Why? Because I remember one particular day he was walking down, and of course we were playing football, and we had disappeared, and there were two of us, so like the team had become imbalanced. So the rest were now sitting down grumpily on the floor, and my dad was walking past, and he had spotted us, but you know he just figured out, you know. And then he looks at these kids, and he's thinking, if I'm going to flog my kids, then these kids also deserve, you know, something.
So everyone
and he stands and sees one of them and says to him, "Why are you sitting down there on the ground with the shorts that your parents bought for you?" And I'm like, "Daddy, that's not your business." But, you know, immediately everybody becomes conscious. And at that time, nobody dares enough to disrespect him. In today's generation, you speak to another man shout, you hear, "Sir, what's your problem? Why, do you understand what I'm saying?" And so as we dismantle, you know, the traditional systems of home, community, and then society, we dismantle the very fabric of
our
what protects
values
us.
and tenets. I have to ask you, right, from the church perspective, and the church champions abstinence in its entirety. But social media, the proliferation of, and see, look, I am an advocate of deleting the internet immediately.
I agree.
Listen, there's a red button, press it,
That is a complex conversation.
That is a mission impossible type scenario.
I want it done immediately because
never happening.
Unfortunately, we have AI, right? And so let's talk about, you know, what the church is dealing with, and by extension the family and society, in terms of the democratization of the internet and how it has now given access to our youth. I'm not even talking about our children, our youth, to pornography, right?
Correct.
You know, the music as well, the pictures. I will just be randomly scrolling on social media. What do I see?
You get jumped by these things.
It is insane.
As an adult.
And the ones that send me the pictures, don't make me start reeling out your names. You know what I mean?
Just to add to what you're saying,
you know,
the truth is, it is our reality today. In spite of it, despite it, rather, we still have children who come out really good, even in the face of these proliferation. So I think it's more of, like she was talking about, what the church is doing and how we can, despite our current reality, still mold children who are morally sound.
But first, abstinence.
So a number of issues have come up here. The first thing is we must have moral rules. A lot of people don't want to hear this, and that's what the church is supposed to stand for. A place where we say certain things should not happen, certain things they were supposed to represent moral consciousness. Now, in fairness, and I'll be honest with you, the church may be failing in that area. Again, it all still boils down to the fact that we've liberalized everything. Now, I'm not one of those I'm not a conservative who says, no, we should not have any liberality and everything should be controlled and governed. However, with our freedom must come responsibility. And so, for me, the more we have churches, the more we should have proper moral guidance. But what church does is basically a support to whatever society is choosing as law. The church cannot override what is law, right? So while let's say
we must separate the state and the church.
Yes, the church is here. It will eventually echo what's being spoken. Let me give you a simple example. In America, they say abortion is legal, right? Which then means all these young girls that are, you know, popping. If you're in America, somebody will be removing it for second billing. Now, whether that is right or wrong, it depends on the government that defines it for you. Luckily for us, our government still frowns at it, and so we're not going all out and encouraging it. Now, if the government says we want abortion, the church would have to Either say clearly that I'm going to go up against government, or, you know, take a following stand.
Okay, so we have a diverse audience, and our audience include agnostics, Muslims, non-religious people, and all of that. So the prison that you're coming from in the Christendom will resonate more with those who have that faith. Let's look at something that hasn't been touched so far in this conversation, and that's the apprentice system. It's one of those things that came from the past to the present and continues to permeate. So is there perhaps a way we can tweak the system and get those who are having these apprentices have some sort of responsibility?
But they always have.
Where the parents,
They've always had.
No, where the parents are failing in terms of sexual education for these apprentices. So this young man was staying with someone, for instance. Is it possible for us to evolve a system where they will have some role? If this person is under your roof, you should educate.
So I would say there's primary education and then secondary education. Let's say your primary education is from your home. It's what you've absorbed as your primary education that you will take into your secondary education. So let's imagine a child is properly brought up at home, then gets to an environment where there's an apprentice, you know, system. And maybe, for example, let's say the leader or the owner of the business where he's running his apprenticeship is a promiscuous person, right? And he's exposed to this promiscuous person. What is society supposed to guide you to do? That child should go back home and give feedback. So, for example, my kids go to school. I expect them to come and tell me, Daddy, I'm in school. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. And I tell you, you can't change what's happening in school. However, you can choose what to do, right? So once we understand that this is how this, because you can't eradicate evil.
All right. I don't know if there's a science to this, but I do have a theory, right? Poverty and...
Correct.
Poverty and sex,
yes,
they go hand in hand. I think it's an entertainment for the lack of wealth. I don't know what it is, right?
A distraction.
So it's past distraction and now entertainment, right? Yes. And this is an apprentice. And just you saying apprentice just took me back to, you know, back in the day. I've always said that I didn't grow up in a privileged background, you know. So I was honored and blessed to have witnessed a number of things growing up. And one of them is the mechanic shop, you know, the vulcanizer shop, you know, the carpentry shop, and the metal workshop. The things that go on in those areas are bizarre and wild.
Bizarre.
You know? And so how then can, not the church this time, right? And maybe not the government, but maybe NGOs and civil societies be able to educate that sect, that part of the society that's often not looked at?
So the truth is, how do we, you know, it starts like a message. You have an idea. We have this conversation right now. How do we spread this message, right? The message that what's going on is wrong, right? Starts at the heart of understanding that to put a message out, before I share with you, I have to come to a point where I believe it. And then I share with you, and then you share with others. Because in the end, you talk to an NGO, right? And I've spoken to several NGOs about, you know, conversations like, you know, child education, you know, especially female, you know, and you would only catch, maybe an NGO does 5,000 kids, 10,000 kids. It has to become something that we build into how we orient ourselves, which is why it's important that we don't damage our culture, right? I love what you talked about when you were talking about the internet and how that is eroding our value system.
Yeah.
Where important things that, you know, I told someone, I said, for the first time I went to America, I was expecting to see naked people everywhere.
And you'll be surprised.
So that TV thing that we're looking at is showing us the worst of them. And the churches in Texas are more than the churches in Lagos. Like, I'm like, wait, am I in Redeeming City? What's going on?
Yeah.
There's this church, that church, Methodist church, everywhere, right? We assume that the average American, right, is a derelict. It's not true. So we have, for example, I remember once I was telling my kids, I said, Will Smith said he, as, you know, funny as his character is, he says he doesn't allow his kids use the F word. So
and he doesn't swear in his songs.
Yes, and I told my kids, I said, see, so that your friends are doing it does not make it right. And it still boils down to this individual element of taking something, believing it's right, and spreading the message.
Okay, I'm just thinking out of the box. We have community health centers. We have, you know, festivals. We just talked about the Ojude festival. We know that there are even, my colleague went to Benue, I think, not too long ago, for the Virgin Emergence and all of that. Is it possible for us to waive conversation around sexual health? So events like this, even in maybe in churches as well, when you have the Sunday service, and in Islamic classes, is it possible?
So I'll give you a simple example. Recently in church, I just, you know, I reached out to the pastor and I said, Pastor, I have a nudging in me to have a conversation with our teenagers. And he was like, what's this? I said, I want to talk to them about sex. I wrote a book called What's the Big Deal About Sex for teenagers, right? Because I feel like, you see, when these kids don't have this information early enough, and it's not just the responsibility of the church. We should do it in schools, we should do it online, we should do it in movies, you know, because this is what is determining how people are making their moral choices. It has to become a conscious thing that we bring back moral instruction. When we were growing up, there was literally a class in secondary school, in primary school, that was moral instruction. I had a note where this is how to behave, this is what to do, this is what to say. Now, in some societies, it's a big deal. You go to the Japanese, they have morals first before everything else, right? But because we've exalted money as the new god in our system, you know, fame and fanciful things are the things that we use to determine I can do anything as long as I'm getting famous. The idea of even the Yahoo system that we have currently comes from me. I don't care how I make money as long as I have money.
No, again, we're talking of the possibility of incorporating a sexual education, but we cannot take the current economic realities out of the equation. You just oppose the poverty and this exploitation of sex and young people. Young girls, when it's too early, or perhaps contraceptive education, because the reality is, I like to be practical. You cannot stop these young people from experimenting, whether we really want to or not. We cannot stop them. So is it practical to also include contraceptive education for both the young girls and the boys who are engaging in this act?
The government must do its part. But if I was going to ask you, would you have me as a teacher teach your daughter contraceptive education?
Yes, absolutely.
Hold on a second.
Yes.
Because again, this is you trusting me to behave myself around the child, right? I'm focused a lot on the primary education. The best person, best person to teach my daughter about contraceptives and stuff should be her mother, who experienced it first. Then what she's taught, she then must now be amplified in a proper education.
So let me now shock you. My mom is a primary school teacher.
Excellent.
A retired primary school teacher. And you would expect that she would know. But she was a bit uncomfortable. I still remember my conversation about menstrual cycle with my mother. You know, and she was very uncomfortable about talking about it. And I had to be the one to say, Mama,
I need to understand what's going on.
I will get the rest of the information. I later was now schooling my mother on some of these issues. If you look at it, sometimes it is not easy. You're looking at the child you birthed. Right?
And it's not that conversation.
Exactly. It is not easy to have these conversations. So,
should the mechanic do it?
No. Let's because we're almost out of time, I really wanted to talk about the young ladies, right? And we don't, like I said, there are no details as to who these 10 girls are. And from what's clear, from my own understanding, it feels like if this boy is 18 and he's done this in 5 months, what more has he done in the past, right? And how long has he left a trail of destruction and babies on his track, right? And so, but most importantly for the young girls, right? This is a precarious time to raise a girl child.
Correct.
You know, it is a hard time and a difficult time. And with the economic indices, it's even extra harder because when you go on social media, you see the weaves and when they tune in and they see you, you know, it's all glamour and everyone aspires to that, right? And so when you have somebody who's an 18-year-old apprenticeship, chances are he's getting money under the table and he's giving this young girls. I mean, like I said, I come from a background, so I know these things. And so how can mothers and fathers
very important
hold their daughters? Because as much as we can talk here, you cannot follow the child everywhere.
You can't.
You know, so what can you do for the teenage girl at this time, given all that is happening in
I say, as a parent, be present. As old as we are, as confident as we are, none of us will sleep with our husbands or wives in the presence of our parents. There is something about the role of the father and the mother, right? And that role was given to you as a responsibility, right? You said you spoke about your mom. Of course, I had the same issues with my, parents. My dad never told me some of the things I'm experiencing now. Like, so this is what my dad was going through, right? And that's what we must change in our generation. These conversations have to be had.
Yeah.
These conversations have to be had, and they have to be had at every level.
Most importantly, everyone be present. The parents be present. The NGOs and the CSOs must come together. The church and society must work hand in hand. Tule Awobi, I must say thank you for taking the time to come. Second week in a row. At this point, you need an award. Head of unit for Niger State, the Commandant Nation. I'm Judith TV. She's Felicity. It's been fun being here. Join us tomorrow, Saturday, or rather Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Until then, it's bye from us. Be present, parents.